The United Nations Security Council has adopted a draft resolution that endorses a three-phased ceasefire proposal between Israel and Hamas. The council vote was 14 in favor and a single abstention from Russia. And for more on this, we're now joined by our US correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Peace, and he joins us now via a video link. Sherwin, thank you so much for your time this evening. I mean, just looking at that and, considering the amount of meetings which have taken place to see some sort of ceasefire, one would say that this is a step in the right direction to seeing an end to this war.
A step in the right direction in Bali, the wind at the back of mediators led by the United States. Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, of course, in the Middle East. Qatar and Egypt have been working for months amid many delays, amid many uphill battles. So what they have now essentially is this. You have an endorsement from the Security Council. You have it speaking with one voice, essentially, the international community saying Israel and Hamas must agree to a proposal. Remember, just by passing this resolution in New York doesn't mean the parties necessarily are going to sign on to what is a parallel process being led by those mediators, but it certainly creates some momentum. Soon after the adoption of the resolution, right, 14 members voting in favor, Russia abstaining. I'll tell you a little bit about why Russia abstained. Soon after the adoption of that resolution, Hamas released a statement saying the following. Hamas welcomes the UN Security Council resolution for the Gaza ceasefire. Hamas says it is ready to cooperate with mediators over implementation of the principles of the ceasefire proposal. What are those principles? Mbali, it comes in three phases announced by President Joe Biden on Friday, May 31st. Phase one would essentially have an immediate, full and complete ceasefire with the release of some hostages, women, the elderly and the wounded, the return of the remains of some hostages who've been killed, the exchange of Palestinian prisoners, the withdrawal of Israeli forces from populated areas in Gaza, the return of Palestinian civilians to their homes, and the safe and effective distribution of humanitarian aid at scale in the enclave. During phase one, the parties must negotiate phase two, which could see a full and complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza, leading to a permanent ceasefire. So phase one would be temporary 6-week ceasefire, allowing parties to negotiate phase two, which would lead to the full withdrawal of the Israeli Defense Force, the Israeli military from Gaza, and also continue to release the remaining hostages that are held by Hamas. Phase three then would be contingent on phase one and phase two being implemented correctly by both parties. And that'll see the beginning of a long-term reconstruction, a sort of Marshall Plan to rebuild and reconstitute what essentially has been a destroyed Gaza enclave, flattened by those bombs over 8 months of military offensive in response to the Hamas attack on October 7th last year. So the council decision today is not the agreement in and of itself. It says we endorse the agreement. It urges the parties to come to a consensus and begin to implement without conditions the parameters of what they agree to. So we are still a little bit away from the parties themselves affirming this, but the United States has been clear. Israel is on board, at least for phase one. Hamas has now quickly released a statement saying we are ready to engage with the mediators on the parameters of the ceasefire proposal. So we certainly have some momentum here that we certainly haven't seen for a number of months, not since the last ceasefire proposal, and that was months away.
And of course, Sherwin, I mean, bringing back to your earlier point in which you made, I mean, I understand that at least 14 countries voted in favor of this, and Russia being one of the countries that abstained. What informed their decision?
Well, the concern here was that Russia and perhaps China and, the Arab group led by Algeria in the council were not completely on board. We did not know hours before this vote how the chips were going to fall. And so it came as a surprise in that vote that we had near consensus in the council, almost unanimity, 14 council members, including China, including the Arab representation, the Africans, the Europeans, Ecuador in the council, broad consensus, but Russia abstaining. And Russia's ambassador spoke a short time ago, Vasily Nebenzia, the Russian envoy. He said the ultimate outlines of the deal are not yet known. And what he's referring to there is basically that phase 2 and phase 3 is still contingent on whether phase 1 is being implemented. And if you've seen previous council endorsements of agreements that are made elsewhere, for example, the Iran nuclear deal in 2015, the JCPOA was first agreed by the parties before it was rubber stamped by the Security Council. What you've seen in this instance is a reversal where the Council is now endorsing a plan that the parties themselves have not completely signed off on yet. So it's a strange formula, and Russia's saying, we don't really know how this thing is going to play out yet, and yet we are, sort of rubber stamping this deal. He says there is a lack of clarity as to whether Israel will accept the deal, right? The US is saying Israel has accepted the deal, but then you hear the narrative emanating from senior public officials, political officials in Israel, including the Prime Minister, saying that they will not, suspend their military operations in Gaza until Hamas is completely defeated, where Hamas can no longer launch attacks against Israel and certainly no longer has governance capabilities. You've heard right-wing members of his coalition government, cabinet ministers, threatening to withdraw their partnership in a coalition government, essentially to collapse the government were Netanyahu to sign on to this deal. So the Russians are saying we need clarity from the Israelis here. He said the council is giving carte blanche to details that we do not yet have. He didn't want to block the resolution because it was supported by the Arab group. And you often see this from the Russians. If regional partners, if regional blocs say, hey, we want something to go through here, they for all intents and purposes, then do not stand in its way. Russia was ready to veto this resolution, but I think due to some outreach from the Arab group, they decided to back the Palestinian position here, the Algerian position here, and very much not to block the broad consensus that 14 members voting in favor of this resolution represented in Bali.
And Sharon, this resolution, what does it essentially mean for the people of Gaza and the people of Palestine, who have been enduring this war for the past couple of months now?
What it tells the people of Palestine, particularly those on the ground, is that the international community agrees that there needs to be a stop to the fighting immediately. If we just take phase 1 says an immediate, unconditional humanitarian ceasefire now, which means the guns must stop blazing, the bombs must stop dropping, humanitarian aid can get into Gaza at scale, border crossings need to be reopened, humanitarian aid, medical supplies, water, sanitation, those kinds of things can now be dealt with. And just to have some peace of mind that perhaps today they won't be shot, perhaps tomorrow they won't be shot, perhaps they're a little bit more secure as a result of this Security Council endorsement. But let's remember that this is merely the international community telling us what they want. The parties themselves have yet to sign off on an agreement that will be penned under the auspices of Qatar, Egypt, and the United States. That's a parallel process. All the council has done today is saying, we want you to go and implement that deal now. Let's see if the parties bring their side, both sides to the table to sign off on this agreement.
Sharon, very important update coming out from the United Nations Security Council this evening. That's our U.S. correspondent live from New York, Sharon Bryce piece there, just giving us insight in terms of the proposal and that decision that has come out from the Security Council.